Hello, everyone. We are reading Chapter 18 of Paola Santiago and the River of Tears by Taylor K. Mejia. Today, Chapter 18 starts on page 202. The title of Chapter 18 is How to Get That Supernatural Glow. Ready? Okay. After Dante and Naomi left, things happened quickly. Marisa told Pao to keep close, then proceeded to move at lightning speed through camp, providing instructions to those staying and words of encouragement to those in the group heading to the east quadrant. Sorry, Teresa just came. Teresa, we just started. We're on page 202. The second paragraph where it says weapons. Let's keep going. Ready? Okay. Weapons were drawn and cleaned, and the bonfire was stoked until the flames seemed to lick the sky. If we're lucky, the ahogados won't make it this far, Marisa said, probably in reaction to the panic on Pao's face. And your friend will be fine. She put a hand on Pao's shoulder. Pao didn't shrug it off, but she took little comfort from it. Having to fight wasn't what she was worried about. She knew Dante. He wanted to be a hero, and now that he had found a purpose in this bizarre setting, he wouldn't quit in the face of danger. No matter what it meant for his own safety, he would fight to protect them all. What he didn't seem to care about was that Pao would never be the same if something happened to him. The horn blew again, 2 short blasts this time. Pao looked to Marisa, whose mouth was set in a grim line. What does that mean? It means they're headed for the boundary. Pao's stomach sank even further. The ahogados weren't coming for them. They were going toward Silver Springs instead, toward Dante's abuela and Pao's mom and every other unsuspecting person taking a walk or reading a newspaper or commuting to work. There's nothing we can do for now, said Marisa. We just have to wait and hope that Naomi and the rest of them can defeat the forces or redirect them here. Our job is to protect the camp, if it falls. But she didn't have time to finish. Pao understood. The camp was the last defense against the corrupted rift. If the Niños were scattered, or worse, there would be nothing to protect Silver Springs or anything beyond it. Do you think they'll be okay? Pao asked, trying not to let her voice waver. Naomi is the best fighter I've ever seen, Marisa said, not really answering the question. The last of the Niños who were headed to the battlefront left a few minutes later. Marisa nodded at each of them in turn, touching their hands or shoulders, imparting strength. Pao stood beside her like a statue, trying not to think of Undina's voice or Dante out there, risking his life without protection or that kiss. She tried, but she didn't succeed. There were only 5 of them left at camp. Marisa, Pao, Sal, and 2 other kids she didn't know. Twins, a boy and a girl, probably 11 or so. It wasn't a very impressive line of defense if the worst happened at the camp and the camp was overrun by ahogados. Still, Pao thought it would be better if the enemy came to them. At least the Niños knew what to expect. The residents of Silver Springs would be helpless. Time dragged like the end of a math test when you're done and everyone else is still working. Only this was much worse, because people were in danger. People like Dante. No one seemed to have anything to say. They all stood with their backs to the fire, facing east, squinting into the distance in case figures appeared in the haze. Pao tried to recall the drowning victims she had heard over the years. Relatives and friends had mourned them, of course, but the Gila River was known to be dangerous, and people had come to accept the tragic accidents as part of living alongside it. But would the casualties of its icy depths appear today? White-haired and green-eyed and ready to drag other kids to their watery fates? Would Emma be among them? Who was responsible for setting all this in motion? Pao was used to having Franco's pixelated face on her mental dartboard, but now the target just had a big question mark in the middle. It couldn't be an ahogado. They were supposed to be terrifying, but not intelligent. And obviously a severed hand wasn't leading the change, nor was the slavering demon dog. She thought of Franco's metaphor about the soldiers and the general. If Pao's mom had gotten it wrong, and La Llorona wasn't the scariest thing the area had to offer, what was? Who was the Rift's commander? And what did he want with all these kids? Try as she might to keep the thought out of her head, Pao couldn't help but see herself as one of the ahogados, as she'd been in her dream. Her own glowing green, her own eyes glowing green, her white hair, proof that everything human had been drained from her. She had one single thing on her mind, to grab hold of Dante and drag him into the water. If only the dream had revealed whose orders she'd felt so compelled to carry out. Beside her, Marisa appeared relaxed, her shoulders straight, weapon in hand. Her eyes, unlike everyone else's, were closed, as if she didn't need vision to know the spirits were coming. Pao remembered watching Marisa put the burning ember into her mouth. Marisa had said she was tying herself to the light, taking in the memories of past leaders. But what if she'd done more than make herself immortal that night? What if she'd inherited some superpowers, and she really didn't need her eyes to know what was happening to her niños? Pao wanted to ask about it, of course, but on the other hand, she didn't want to disturb what might be the last moments of peace Marisa got before the battle. The last moments any of them got. The horn blew again, and Pao nearly jumped out of her skin. It was just one blast this time, long and mournful. Pao looked at Marisa, though a sinking feeling in her stomach told her that this sound didn't mean anything good. Someone's been taken, Marisa said, without opening her eyes. One of ours. Dante's not one of yours, Pao thought, tears already stinging the back of her eyes. He's mine, and he's coming back, he promised. But she knew that was just wishful thinking. Dante was as much a niño as Pao wasn't. They wouldn't blow the horn for him, and he would deserve the honor. If time had been slow before, it seemed to have stopped now. Pao couldn't feel the campfire burning at her back anymore. Everything inside her was frozen. She tightened her grip on her knife. If one of those soulless things had taken Dante, she wouldn't rest until she had killed them all. When three short, sharp blasts sounded, Pao didn't have to ask what they meant. It was evident in the shifting stances of the niños around her, and the way Marisa opened her eyes at last, scanning the field in front of them like a well-trained warrior. They're coming, Pao said. It wasn't a question. No one corrected her. She tried to remember everything that she'd learned in the pit that morning. Offense and defense and weak points and all that rest of it. But the only thing in her head were the sound of that long funeral horn blast and the vision of herself as a monster dragging Dante for the water. Would the ahogados take her too? Or would she be spared again? And which was worse? If Dante had been taken, did she want to be spared? Up ahead! Shouted Marisa, and Pao snapped back to the present, shifting her gaze to where the leader was pointing. Through the mist, which had only grown thicker over the past hour, several silhouettes could be seen moving quickly toward them. Were they ahogados? Or was it Dante and Naomi's group fleeing back to safety? Marisa gave her the answer. Defend the fire, she said in a low voice. They will try to douse it. Pao met her eyes and nodded once. The manos had exploded when they met the flames. The creatures of the watery rift obviously couldn't withstand the heat. It was an advantage, and they had few enough of those. There was no space in the air between Pao and Marisa for words of comfort. The horn was blowing frantically, the code long forgotten. These sounds meant panic and danger, and Pao was afraid, but the reason for her fear wasn't the same as everyone else's. Her fear was that she was safe, and everyone else around her was in danger, and it was too late for her to tell them. She had never felt so alone. They're almost here, Marisa said, and Pao could see the ahogados now. Their eyes and the auras around them glowed green through the haze, green like the mist that had chased her out of Dante's apartment, green like Pao's nightmares. She scanned the shapes coming closer, hoping to recognize Dante's form among them, but so far it was only ghosts. Middle school-sized kids with green eyes and white hair moving with the feral grace of animals or predators. Marisa charged forward, her water knife cutting through them and taking chunks of their bodies with it. Like frozen smoke, their parts shattered in the air, yet the ahogados fought on limbless, half-headless, and still terrifying. Pale lips curled back over teeth that were gapped or crooked. or covered by metal braces. Pao didn't recognize any of the kids' faces yet they were still familiar. They were children like her, but with a horrible, toxic glow where the light in their eyes should have been. How many generations of drowned children were here today? Pao wondered as they swarmed. There were 20 of them, 50, maybe more. With all the swirling and the shattering, Pao couldn't keep track long enough to count them. Instead, she looked for Dante, for the firelight glinting off his club, or for Emma, her Arizona tan gone pale, her glittering purple nails reaching for ankles or wrists or throats. She didn't see either of them, and terror started to choke her. She stood paralyzed in the middle of the chaos. Everyone around her screamed and fighting as Naomi's group caught up, and the combat around the fire began in earnest. Where's Dante? Pao's thoughts screamed. Her whole body screamed, where's Dante? A ghost girl got too close, and Pao reacted instinctively, stabbing with her knife, watching the shock and anger on the monster's face as her wrist shattered, her pale hand left dangling by only a thin strap of skin. Is it skin? Pao wondered almost hysterically, but this was no time to question the biological makeup of ghosts. Another one was coming at her, a boy, taller than Pao and broader in the shoulders. This time, her knife was too slow. He got a hold of her arm, and the shock of his touch caused her to drop the dagger. She pulled with all her strength, twisting and writhing in his grip, and the unnatural cold burning into her skin until she couldn't tell heat from ice, and she felt dizzy. Help me! She tried to scream, but her vocal cords were frozen too. The boy started to drag her away from the fire, and though she fought as hard as she could, Pat was no match for his supernatural strength. Just give in, said a voice in her head. Was it her subconscious? Let them take you. There's a place for you here. The source takes care of its own. No! Pam managed to squeak. Her voice was weak and feeble, and she was oh so tired. Just when the phantom was about to pull Pao outside the protective circle of firelight, Naomi slammed into him, her staff glinting in the haze as she took chunks off his body. At last, he collapsed in a heap. You okay? She asked Pao. Dante? Pao said through frozen lips. Is Dante? The defeated look on Naomi's face was all the answer that Pao needed. Behind them, someone screamed, and Naomi was already moving toward the commotion. She paused to put a hand on Pao's shoulder. Get back to the fire and don't stand still, Naomi said, and then she was gone. Pao tried to stay focused and alert, but all she could think about was Dante. Dante being dragged away, the horn blowing long and low for him. Dante taken to wherever Emma had gone. Gone, gone, gone. That's when the second ghost grabbed her. A girl this time, and she was faster than the last. Her arms locked around Pao's middle as she dragged her away from the warmth of the flames. Any minute now, Pao thought. Any minute, the voice would come to her rescue, tell the ahogada to let her go. But instead, another specter joined in, clutching Pao's legs and pulling her hard to the ground, knocking the breath from her lungs. A third one came, sneering and slit-eyed, putting his clammy hands around Pao's throat. Where was that stupid voice? Where was Undina? Wasn't Pao monster enough to be spared? Like the faint smell of smoke, doubt wafted into her head. What if she was gone? Wrong. What if no one was going to save her this time? Her knife was long gone, but the shopping bag was still on Pao's shoulder. It was all she had. Around her, everyone was engaged in battle. Out of the corner of her eye, she could see Marisa swinging her water knife with abandon, and Naomi was letting loose a war cry somewhere nearby. There was no one to save her on either side. She was alone and losing ground. With her one free hand, Pao dug into the bag and pulled out the flashlight. She wasn't even sure what she planned to do with it. She just felt better holding it than being unarmed. Perhaps she could hit one of the ahogados in the head with it, or shine the light in their eyes. Maybe if she was lucky, they would be stunned enough to let her go. But when she clicked the on button, something else happened. Warmth returned to her body, too fast, like she had put cold hands under scalding water from the faucet. She almost lost her grip on the plastic handle, but she had learned her lesson from losing the knife, and she held on to it for dear life. As the warmth spread through her arms and legs, the ahogados dragging her seemed to slow. Or was it just her imagination? Against the green mist swirling around her, Pau's skin began to glow golden. The ghost boy let go of her with a furious hiss, like he'd been burned, but there was still 2 ahogados left. The warmth continued to travel, spreading to her torso and pooling in her stomach. The girl hugging her middle let go as well. As Pao glowed, she felt the sharp pulling sensation from her dream deep in her chest. It hurt, and pain worsened as the beam got brighter. But Pao knew she shouldn't let go of the flashlight, not even if it turned into a supernova. Confused, looking to his mates for cues, the 3rd ahogado loosened his grip around her neck, and Pao lay on the ground, limp with relief, the toy hot in her hand like it had just been taken out of the oven. Her body continued to blaze until it couldn't hold the light inside anymore. The heat in her veins dissipated as a glow radiated out from her center. Soon she was surrounded by a translucent golden sphere that repelled the ahogados, leaving only the niños with its brilliant bubble. Pao sat up, her vision swimming, her extremities growing cold as the sphere continued to grow, robbing vital energy from her as it did so. But it was working. Outside the circle of its glow, she could see the ahogados fleeing. Their wails and screams pierced the night, and the sound was familiar to Pao, though she couldn't quite remember where she'd heard it before. In a matter of minutes, the battle was over, and all Pao could hear was the crackling of the fire. Using the last of her strength, she clicked off the flashlight, and the glow disappeared, taking the warmth with it. Her whole body trembled as she pushed herself to stand up. Around her, every last one of the niños was looking at her, thunderstruck. "Dante?" Pao said, feeling her knees buckle just before everything went black.